So there's this tree. Nothing special, just some overgrown branches in a tense border zone. Until one day, it sparks a global military response, so ridiculously over the top, it becomes a textbook case of malicious compliance with tanks. Hello, and welcome back to Karma Stories. I'm Rob, and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. This one hits on all the notes. We've got drama, high-stakes politics, absurd rules, and a revenge response so calculated, so theatrical, you'd swear it was made up for a Reddit post. But no, this one actually happened. This is the story of Operation Paul Bunyan, the US military's answer to a very bad decision made by North Korea in the summer of 1976. And when I say answer, I mean a chainsaw-wielding, bomber-circling, paperwork-approved flex that somehow stayed completely within the rules and still sent a message loud and clear. Alright, let's rewind to the early 1970s and consider the backdrop of the Korean Peninsula, specifically the Demilitarized Zone, the DMZ. Despite the term demilitarized, the DMZ is arguably one of the most heavily guarded borders on Earth. They've got razor wire fences, minefields, watchtowers, and a near constant military presence on both sides. Its creation dates back to 1953, when the Korean War halted in an armistice rather than a formal peace treaty. Thus, North and South Korea technically remain at war to this day, despite the decades that have passed. The DMZ runs roughly along the 38th parallel and spans 4 kilometers in width, that's 2.4 miles, with 2 kilometers on each side of the Military Demarcation Line, the MDL. The entire region is a paradox. On one hand, it's teeming with tension and armed patrols. On the other, it has become an accidental haven for wildlife due to minimal human habitation. Within this zone lies the Joint Security Area, JSA. If the DMZ is tense, the JSA is doubly so. It's the only portion of the DMZ where the North Korean and South Korean forces, along with the United Nations Command, or UNC, physically stand face to face. The JSA itself is tiny, just a cluster of buildings straddling the borderline, with a handful of symbolic blue huts used for diplomatic talks. A literal concrete slab, only a few inches high, marks the demarcation line. Soldiers from both sides stand guard 24/7, mere meters apart, locked in an endless staring contest. Even the slightest miscalculation here can spiral into a significant international incident. Now, picture a large poplar tree planted decades earlier, growing near one of the UNC's crucial checkpoints. Over time, it becomes so tall and bushy that it blocks the line of sight between 2 vital guard posts used to monitor North Korean troop movements. In a normal setting, this would be a trivial landscaping job. Trim the branches, maintain visibility, move on. But the JSA is anything but normal. Here, every action is regulated, observed, and laden with potential for conflict. Still, the safety imperative is clear. If the UNC can't see certain angles of the North Korean side, troops might miss signs of an impending provocation or infiltration. So by the mid-1970s, the poplar tree is too large, too dense, and too potentially dangerous to ignore. Routine maintenance is authorized. After all, the armistice agreement permits each side to perform upkeep in its area of responsibility. So, in theory, trimming a tree should pose no diplomatic risk, provided it's done carefully. In practice, as you'll see, nothing in the JSA is truly safe from confrontation. It's August 18th, 1976, and at precisely 10:30 a.m., a detail of South Korean and American soldiers, along with a small maintenance crew, arrives at the poplar tree. They're there for a simple mission: trim away some branches to restore the view between UNC checkpoints. Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett, both of the US Army, lead the team. Neither officer expects trouble. Similar pruning tasks had happened in the past without serious incident. But the JSA's environment is hyper-surveilled. North Korean soldiers stationed in the nearby guard posts are quick to notice the maintenance crew. Within minutes, a group of North Korean troops show up, led by Lieutenant Pak Chol, who's been involved in confrontational incidents before. Pak steps forward brimming with hostility, claiming the tree is special, that it was planted by Kim Il-sung himself, North Korea's founding leader, making it off-limits to any outside touch. Captain Boniface remains calm and explains that the maintenance is authorized. Under the existing rules, the UNC can remove visual obstructions to ensure the safety of its personnel. But tension mounts. the kind of tension that makes you acutely aware of every breath. Suddenly, the North Korean soldiers lunge. They snatch axes from the maintenance crew and begin swinging them at the UNC forces with reckless fury. Chaos erupts. Boniface is struck repeatedly, sustaining grave injuries. Lieutenant Barrett tries to run, but he's pursued and brutally attacked as well. Within a minute, it's over. The North Korean soldiers withdraw as abruptly as they appeared, leaving the Americans and South Koreans horrified at the carnage. Captain Boniface and Lieutenant Barrett are mortally wounded, lying in the grass near the now blood-stained tree. They will soon die from their injuries, victims of a shockingly brazen act of violence. News of the incident rockets up the chain of command. US and South Korean forces in the DMZ are stunned by the brazenness of what would soon be known as the Korean axe murder incident. As the details emerge, outrage spreads from the frontline troops to the highest levels of government in Seoul and Washington, D.C. The UNC promptly lodges protests with the North, but there's no sign of remorse. In fact, Pyongyang's official line, as broadcast via propaganda, places blame squarely on the Americans and South Koreans, painting the assault as an act of self-defense against aggression. The rest of the world, however, sees 2 American officers killed for trimming a tree in a supposedly neutral zone, an almost unimaginable provocation. President Gerald Ford is briefed on the situation. US commanders in Korea make it clear that a response is absolutely necessary, but it must be calibrated. The 1970s is still a high-stakes period of the Cold War. An all-out assault on North Korea risks drawing in the Soviet Union or China, potentially triggering a larger war. Conversely, a weak response could embolden Pyongyang to launch more dangerous provocations, possibly leading to even greater casualties down the road. Within days, top-ranking officers along with diplomats and intelligence analysts get in meetings and strategy sessions. They debate a range of possibilities: a limited airstrike against North Korean guard post, a demonstration on the border with heavy armor, covertly targeting the individuals responsible. Each option carries significant risk. Eventually, a plan emerges that brilliantly addresses both the moral outrage and the strategic necessity of deterrence. The UNC will complete the very task for which its officers died, trimming the tree, and do so in the most extravagant, intimidating way imaginable. The logic is simple: show North Korea and the rest of the world that murder will not stop a lawful action. Any further violence will be met with overwhelming retaliation. And so is born Operation Paul Bunyan. The name is no accident. Paul Bunyan is a legendary giant lumberjack from American folklore, known for clearing entire forests. The mission's essence is laid out. We're not just going to trim a few branches, we're going to remove that tree and make it crystal clear that no one can kill UNC officers over routine maintenance and get away with it. So now came the greatest flex in military compliance history. 3 days after the murders, August 21st, 1976, dawn breaks over the DMZ. North Korean soldiers, probably anticipating some response, could not have imagined the sheer scale of the thunderous spectacle they'd witness. Without warning, dozens of helicopters appear in the sky, their blades slicing through the early morning air. Close behind are convoys of trucks, jeeps, and armored vehicles, carrying hundreds of US and South Korean soldiers. This is no discreet mission. The UNC wants it to be seen. Immediately noticeable are the M48 Patton tanks taking position near the JSA. Large artillery pieces are also deployed, trained on potential North Korean targets. Further south, entire battalions of South Korean troops stand ready to move at a moment's notice. Overhead, a variety of US fighter jets, F-4 Phantoms, F-5 Tigers, and even an F-86 Sabre from the Republic of Korea squadrons conduct low passes that rattle windows and send a clear message: we are armed and we are watching. To underscore the seriousness, a B-52 Stratofortress, a long-range heavy bomber capable of carrying nuclear ordnance, flies a conspicuously well-publicized route near the DMZ. Meanwhile, the USS Midway, an aircraft carrier group, repositions off the Korean coast, placing its warplanes within striking distance. Across the peninsula, the US 8th Army is raised to DEFCON 3, a high-alert state, implying forces can be mobilized for combat in about 15 minutes. All of this is meticulously coordinated, from the highest echelons of the Pentagon down to the boots on the ground. The UNC plan has multiple contingencies. If North Korea so much as fires a shot, a massive retaliation is ready to launch, possibly including airstrikes on artillery and infiltration tunnels known to exist near the DMZ. The raw might on display is staggering, far exceeding anything seen since the Korean War ended in 1953. And yet, crucially, this unprecedented buildup does not violate the armistice agreement in the slightest. Under that accord, UNC personnel are entirely within their rights to conduct maintenance tasks in the JSA and defend themselves if threatened. There's no rule capping the number of soldiers or type of equipment used for such defense. Thus, from a legal standpoint, Operation Paul Bunyan is nothing more than an authorized tree trimming job with robust security. In the JSA itself, the moment arrives. Armed combat engineers, some from the US Army's 2nd Engineer Battalion, others from the Republic of Korea Army, approach the infamous poplar tree. They carried chainsaws, axes, and other equipment. Snipers, special forces, and heavily armed infantry form a perimeter around them, weapons poised. Tensions run so high that a single misread gesture could ignite a firefight. A small cluster of North Korean guards stands by, presumably stunned. Their side had used axes days before in a savage ambush. Now, they watch a line of well-protected engineers do exactly what Boniface and Barrett had intended. They began cutting. Branches fall to the ground in swift strokes, saws scream through the bark, and in less than an hour, the once massive poplar is reduced to a tall, ragged stump. No shots are fired. There is no interference. The North Koreans, outgunned and outnumbered, do nothing but observe. The UNC forces gather their tools, police the area, and depart as efficiently as they arrived. The entire operation is a masterclass in organization, timing, and the psychological use of overwhelming force. Operation Paul Bunyan is far more than a landscaping job. It is, in effect, the most brazenly theatrical yet entirely legal show of military intimidation the DMZ has ever witnessed. The message is simple. Yes, we are trimming this tree, and if you so much as try to harm another one of our soldiers, we will respond with everything we have. Behind the scenes, American and South Korean commanders had hammered out multiple contingency plans. Some called for immediate artillery barrages on North Korean positions if the trimming team was attacked. Others involved the rapid mobilization of mechanized infantry to secure the JSA. Still others considered airstrikes against key leadership or communication hubs in the north. The stakes could not have been higher. A single bullet fired at the work crew would have escalated into a second Korean War. But that bullet never came. North Korea, faced with an unambiguous demonstration of US and Republic of Korea unity and might, chose not to engage. Within days, Pyongyang issued a statement that many read as an apology, though couched in the usual bombastic language typical of North Korean propaganda. It was a significant climb down for a regime known for never admitting fault. In global diplomatic circles, this was seen as a vindication of the operation, proof that a controlled but formidable response could produce results short of total war. In the immediate wake of Operation Paul Bunyan, tensions remained extremely high. Soldiers on both sides of the DMZ remained on alert, uncertain whether the calm was temporary. Yet the crisis began to abate, partly because North Korea recognized that the United States and South Korea were willing to risk a substantial escalation rather than let the axe murders go unanswered. Within the joint security area, operation protocols were revised. One outcome was a reconfiguration of some guard posts to avoid future blind spots. Another involved an even stricter set of rules for crossing certain lines, scheduling maintenance, and ensuring no soldier would be caught off guard. The famous Bridge of No Return, a nearby point in the JSA used for prisoner exchanges, took on added symbolic weight. These were not places to be treated casually. As for the tree itself, the remainder of that poplar, the infamous stump, became an enduring symbol. For a while, tours to the JSA would include, from a distance, a glimpse of the remains of that most dangerous tree in the world. Soldiers stationed there took occasional photos near the stump, a morbid reminder of the two officers who lost their lives and the extraordinary operation launched in their honor. The stump eventually was removed altogether to prevent it from becoming a provocative shrine to either side. Regardless, its story persisted in everyone's memory. Globally, many nations saw Operation Paul Bunyan as a prime example of how the US Republic of Korea alliance functioned under crisis. It was swift and unified, and prepared to back up its words with action. Critics of the operation worried that it could have triggered another catastrophic war on the peninsula, but even those critics agreed that failing to respond decisively would have sent a catastrophic signal of weakness. And in the end, the mission was carried out without incurring new casualties, an extraordinary accomplishment given the readiness of both sides for a potential fight. Operation Paul Bunyan is one of the most surreal moments in Cold War history, a moment where tree maintenance, military posturing, and international politics collided in a single orchestrated act of defiance. The UNC didn't break the rules. In fact, they followed them to the letter, and in doing so, they weaponized procedure. A task as routine as cutting back branches became a global demonstration of resolve, scaled so dramatically that no one dared challenge it. In the joint security area, where crossing a painted line can spiral into crisis, the idea that you could legally roll in tanks and bombers to support a maintenance crew exposed just how flexible rigid rules can be. More than anything, this story highlights how much weight symbolism carries in the DMZ. That poplar wasn't just a tree, it was a proxy for control, pride, and power. And once lives were lost in its shadow, the United Nations Command had a choice to make: stand down or send a message. Operation Paul Bunyan was that message, clear, calculated, and unmissable. The mission also gave rise to what some have called a strategy of proportionate disproportion, responding to a precise provocation with overwhelming presence. Was it risky? Definitely, but it worked. North Korea backed down. No further escalations followed in the JSA, and a single defiant action drew a hard boundary without igniting full-scale war. In the broader history of the DMZ, this ranks alongside the most intense standoffs, tunnels, defections, and propaganda wars, but it's the absurdity of the event that makes it unforgettable. Few other incidents illustrate so clearly how fragile peace is in that space, and how fast things can shift from routine to historic. The memory of Captain Boniface and Lieutenant Barrett lives on not just through plaques or ceremonies, but in how every service member assigned to the DMZ is briefed on their story. Even North Korea, through its usual filter of propaganda, seemed to take something from the event. While they publicly condemned the operation, they didn't repeat the behavior that sparked it. Not in that way. If anything, Operation Paul Bunyan may have forced them to reassess what kind of response they were actually prepared to handle. And that's where the real lesson lives, not just in deterrence, but in the power of doing exactly what you're allowed to do, just bigger, louder, and with absolute commitment. It's a reminder that rules can be shields or swords, depending on how you use them, whether in diplomacy, bureaucracy, or everyday life. Sometimes the most commanding move isn't rebellion, it's compliance, turned up to 11. In the end, this wasn't just about a tree, it was about proving a point delivered through jets, chainsaws, and cold precision, and one that still echoes through military strategy courses and war stories decades later. Thanks for tuning in to this Karma Stories Deep Cut. I hope this true story of a quiet escalation, bold retaliation, and meticulously applied compliance hit that perfect balance of chaos and justice. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that follow button on the podcast or on YouTube, subscribe, and drop a like on the video. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.